good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Kevin Stevenson, on today's episode of I Don't Care with, of course, me, Dr. Kevin Stevenson. Today's episode is going to be one that I think you'll find very interesting. A subject that I always dealt with as a hospital administrator was how do we better educate not only our patients and staff, but our physicians as well. And there were a lot of different ways that we chose to do that, a lot of different platforms. But today's guest, Stephen Page, who is the founder and CEO of SmarterHealthAI, has some solutions that I think will meet those challenges. So, Stephen, welcome to I Don't Care.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, and I look forward to this conversation.
As do I. I notice a bit of an accent. That's not Central Texas, Stephen. Where are you from originally?
I always tell people I got the nose fixed. Now the mouth doesn't work. I've been lucky enough to live in Dallas, Texas since 1980, but I was born in London, England, worked there, was educated there, worked in Europe, and then got to the States in 1979.
Wonderful. Tell my audience a little bit more about you because you have had a really storied career prior to starting Smarter Health.
It feels like I'm in the middle of a glorious male menopause at this fourth quarter of my professional life. But the majority of my life was spent building a very high-end executive search firm where we serve the largest professional services firms from offices in London, New York, Washington, and Dallas. And I was on a plane every day for about 35 years. And I'd had nothing to do with healthcare whatsoever. But I had a good friend that pioneered stent technology and angioplasty procedures in America. And I was always fascinated by the work that he did. And we were going to build a community platform to support another passion I have, which is vintage rape. And we were introduced to a wonderful character in Dallas called Dr. Tony Das. And Dr. Das leads digital health strategy for Baylor Scott and White, the Heart Hospital Plano. He's got his own business, Connected Cardiovascular Care Associates. He went to Harvard, he went to Stanford. He's a wonderful professional. And when we asked him, had he got any interest in building a heart health community, he leapt into our arms and said he wanted to do it for 20 years and had never found the technical partner to do it with. And my partner had built the original Match.com platform. And this was an extremely unusual opportunity to find someone of Dr. Das's caliber willing to be our subject matter expert as we developed this platform. So it was really serendipitous with a world-class professional leading. How do we answer all the questions that he gets asked during the course of seeing 30,000 patients over 30 years of practice?
Interesting. Very interesting. So in your career, you've built all of these companies, but as you've certainly found recently over the last few years, healthcare is very different. So what has convinced you that patient engagement was where AI could have a really significant impact in healthcare?
There is so much misinformation out there. For instance, physicians have a fun term for Google. They call it Dr. Google. And if you look up AFib, what is AFib, atrial fibrillation, which is a heart condition, on Google, you will get 100 million search results. And all AI does today is goes and samples that 100 million search results and then gives you a word salad that it thinks is accurate as in terms of the definition and all of the attributes. And they may or may not be sourced from professionally curated information. So in building our platform, we were very fortunate to become members of the ACC, the American College of Cardiology. And with their written permission, they allowed us to take their professionally curated information that had been placed into a 1990s website to help people understand the different heart conditions. And we were able to put it in our AI driven platform and add functionality. For instance, if a doctor's defining AFib for the 40th time that day to patients, they may be running out of steam. And they can use a QR code in our platform to drop a definition of what a heart condition is with questions to ask your doctor. And if you think about the sequence of 30 million Americans with a doctor every year to help diagnose a heart condition of some sort, when they get to see the doctor after the prescribed test, they usually get 20 to 30 minutes with the doctor, and they're sitting there with white coat syndrome. They're terrified. Life's cheap. And they have to do all sorts of different things. And I would say 10 to 15% of the population are prepared for that moment, and they've got written questions down, and they maximize the effectiveness of that 20, 30 minutes they have with the doctor. And 80 or 90% are not. And I love this big saying, better educated patients lead to better health outcomes. And if you can help provide patients and or their loved ones with professionally curated information that helps them manage these critical health journeys more effectively and maximize the effectiveness of the time that they do have with the highest tier of professionals when they're going through these diagnoses or real actions, we can improve the quality of. So this almost became a god for you as we developed this platform. We created a relationship with the Society for Vascular Surgery. The head of the former head of PBM Watson for oncology came to us and inspired us to broaden the perspective of this platform so it became the top 10 diseases known to kill mankind. World-class neurologist from New York helped us create the neurology capability. Then we quickly followed with kidney, lung, and then Alzheimer's, dementia. And we built out the platform with knowledge bases from the most authentic sources of information. And then AWS, Amazon Web Services, came to us and said, we love what you're doing. You need an agentic AI front end to this platform. And we said, well, that's a lovely idea. Who's going to pay for that? And they said, we will. So, in an incredibly generous gift, AWS worked with us and their technical partner, Allcloud, to build an agentic AI front end for the platform. And as we speak on this speech today or this discussion today, we are just loading up our knowledge bases from all of these sources. And we hope to be live with this platform in the third quarter of this year. And it's a really unique service offering.
That's tremendous. I mean, that what a coup for your company to be able to get that assistance from AWS. So everybody's talking about AI replacing workforce, and a lot of people are really concerned about that. And you talk about AI really empowering patients. So do you think we're asking the wrong questions about artificial intelligence in healthcare?
This is such a broad question. For instance, there's been so much done with the interpretation of image using AI to read images as opposed to a physician. And I think it's getting close to the point where the AI may be as or more than the physician in terms of picking up nuances within reading imaging for all sorts of parts of the body. But I think the challenge for AI, how do we make it approachable to patients? How do we make it useful for individuals undergoing, either for themselves or for a loved one, critical health journey? How do we get best professionally curated information in bite sizes and it's not overwhelmingly complex or in technical languages? It's in everyday languages. How do we render that information effectively on need? So, for instance, a visit to a cardiologist, we do all sorts of lifestyle changes. You need to lose 50 pounds. You need to get fit. You need to find a home care professional to take care of your brother. You need to find a nurse to come and take care of your mother and a speech pathologist to help you speak again after a stroke. Where do you find all of that information in one place as opposed to spending days with Dr. Google trying to professionally curated information? And over a 4-year period, our platform has aspired to building that capability. And we think our way forward is to white label this for large hospital systems, for payers, and for pharmaceutical companies. As we went through this research, we learned something, a stunning statistic. Less than 8% of people understand the effects on their bodies pharmaceutical drugs that are actually right to them. They don't read the literature, they just take the drug and they truly don't understand the interaction or the multi effects of having drugs prescribed by different providers. And it's a scary. How do we help educate patients all of these elements of their care?
No, that's I totally understand that. So hospital leaders, health system leaders understand the need to invest in patient engagement, but we're under enormous financial pressure. So talk to me, why should I, as president CEO of XYZ Health System, choose to invest with you and your company in order to create a patient engagement model?
It's really simple. With a world-class chief technology officer as one of our leadership team, it's taken us 4 years to build this platform. A hospital system like Baylor Scott & White, serving 4 or 5 million patients through 50 plus hospitals, can try and build this platform with their chief technology officer, who's doing 100 other things, the CEO, or they can white label our solution. It's hosted in the cloud, so it doesn't have to integrate with anything else they're doing, and they can have access to that in 90 days, as opposed to several years with a high potential risk of failure if they develop it in-house. It's a build versus buy decision.
That makes an awful lot of sense. So, Stephen, throughout your career, and particularly over the last few years, you talked a lot about global health equity. So, in my perspective, AI has the potential to either narrow those disparities or widen them. So, what path do you think we're currently on, and what really needs to change to improve that?
I love this next part of the story. If you live in one of America's top 100 cities, you're likely to find all the resources you need to manage a critical health journey. If you live in one of America's 4,000 rural communities, good luck. And if you live in a third world country, you're out of luck. You just don't have the enormous resources of the American health. system has to leverage upon or to rely upon. And what we've done, and this would be a wonderful capstone to my career if we can pull this off, is to make this available on a global basis. For instance, we've introduced a translation capability to our platform that translates all of this professionally curated content into 120 different languages. So I can touch a button and everything is in Arabic, or it's in German, or it's in Punjab, or in Persian, or a language. You didn't have to go through translators. You didn't have to go and source all this information from multiple sources. We put it all in one place.
So, one thing I've learned in my career is that technology will fail if the culture resists it. So, been the biggest barrier that you've encountered? You know, is it the technology or is it the clinicians, the hospital leadership, the patients, a combination? What have you seen?
There's an enormous we didn't create it, we don't own it, we didn't invent it here. So, for instance, we were dealing with a large health system, and there was an individual in charge of delivering patient education, and their version of the truth was to buy a book and stamp the logo of the hospital on the bottom of every page, and then give that to the patient. They're not created with the latest thinking and the latest technology and the latest resources, and ours is. And it will shortcut their journey to deliver similar high quality information to their patients if they use a platform like ours or others.
Very good. So, so many health systems today are buying AI solutions. I mean, on a weekly, if not daily basis. So, 5 years from now, what percentage do you think of today's AI companies will even still be relevant? And what's going to separate the survivors from everyone else?
It's really market share. So I'll come back to open evidence because they did something very clever. They used a national provider index as a way to register 600,000 of the 1.2 million physicians in America without charge. So this was free. And they're going to use or deploy a Google ad type model in the future to create the revenue side of their business. But the survivors are going to be the ones that create as frictionless as possible an interface for the patients to engage with the platform. And the survivors, again, are going to be the ones that provide the most value in terms of information and resources in the shortest period of time, patients searching for these answers.
Yeah, I would agree with that because the speed to market and then bringing the relevant information to market is what's going to keep those people, those organizations really relevant. You know, I've been approached over the last almost year now by a number of different companies that on the surface have wonderful ideas, whether they're AI generated or not. But it all boils down to in today's healthcare environment, with the significant financial pressures that everyone is seeing, how can you impact my bottom line today? And so, I've had to be pretty open and honest with some of these folks and say, I love your idea, but that's not going to be a priority of a C-suite right now today. Maybe down the road, but not today. And so it's been a hard conversation I've had to have with a few folks, but so let's talk about the future. So we're sitting here 5 years from now. What do you think patients will expect from their healthcare that seems almost impossible today, but that will be considered normal by then?
So before we launch into this question, I'd actually like to go to the one you just referenced, is financial impact. Um, I'm aware of a particular health system that has a what's called a readmissions problem. Medicare will agree to pay you, let's say, for instance, $10,000 to do a procedure, change a mitral valve in your heart. If you perform that operation and the patient doesn't come back with a successful operation, successful outcome, you're likely to get the $10,000 that Medicare promised you. If that patient comes back 2 or 3 times, even to ask questions, that institution is going to get penalized by what's called a readmission penalty. And in the particular health system I'm thinking of, it costs them hospital per year with a readmission charge. And this is endemic across all healthcare. Imagine, and let's say this entity had 10 hospitals. That's a $30 million a year problem. And we can mitigate, not solve it completely, but we can lessen that impact by 20 or 30%. That's a $6 million saving that falls right to the bottom line if we can help reduce readmission across a hospital system or across a care or across a pharmaceutical company. So there's enormous financial incentive for health systems specifically to get this right. Then you asked another very insightful question. What does this look like in 5 years? I, I don't think we know. It's moving so fast. You're likely to have your own concierge AI doctor that has studied every health record throughout your entire life. And they're a world-class internist, they function as a world-class internist for you. And they know all of the people within your professionals within your network, know how to schedule and prescribe. It We'll have personal concierge doctors on a global basis at some point, probably sooner than later.
I would agree with that, and it's amazing the technology that's out there. You know, I just ordered and received yesterday a scale that also measures body fat, body comp, and all of that. And in comparing the reports, they are 95 to 98% similar to a DEXA scan that you would get in a hospital or a clinic. And so we're starting to see things like that in the home. And so I'm with you. You know, there are ideas out there that people have that seem so far-fetched today that will be commonplace in 2030 and beyond.
Oh, it won't take 5 years for us to have this, but there's a terrifying part to this as well. I I engage with AI platforms just as a matter of course to find out what else is out there. And a very prominent vendor offered an AI solution that I'm describing. This is your personal doctor. And 3 or 4 steps into the engagement or registration process, I was asked to grant them full access to all my healthcare records. And the potential for abuse or discrimination is so huge with that. I immediately pressed stop and went back. There's no ethical set of laws that are being created to say what is good and what is not good to share with these systems. And imagine now this information is in the hands of the wrong people, and you're being blackmailed because you have conditions that you haven't disclosed to your employer. Or health insurance companies are making, am I going to insure you or not decisions based on this access. There's a lot to be sorted out before this becomes commonplace.
Yeah, yeah. I tell people, you know, and like you, I talk with people about AI on a daily basis. And I said, you know, AI has the brain, but it doesn't have the heart and the ethics to be able to make those types of decisions that a human can make. And so agreeing with you, you know, having to having to create some sort of AI, usage platform, usage standards, or whatever, is going to be incumbent upon continued growth in healthcare. So okay. So Stephen, last question. This is kind of, I like to end on kind of a philosophical question. So, if healthcare leaders listening today could embrace just one mindset shift around AI, what would you want them to do? What would you want them to rethink?
They need to embrace it because it's coming. And there is a tremendous amount of education required institutionally to make this really effective within their institutions and then safe for the patients that they support. But it's coming. You need to embrace it, and you need to understand how to leverage it most effectively within your environment.
Again, I totally agree with you on that because, you know, talking with colleagues of mine who are all across the spectrum. Either we have bought in fully into AI, or we are staying as far away from it as possible. And I tell them, look, your payers are already using AI against you. So you've got to be able to be knowledgeable enough to be able to combat that. And so, I'm seeing even small hospitals creating AI committees so that they can vet the various solutions. And so if small critical access hospitals can do that, I think every hospital and system needs to go forward with that if they haven't already. So, well, Stephen, it's been a real pleasure having you on today. I think your platform, Smarter Health, is certainly one that is necessary and needed. And as you've described it, I think as a health system executive, it's something that people really need to take a serious look at, so that they can be more prescriptive, pardon the pun, with their patients, and what their patients' questions are and what their patients' needs are. So again, thank you so much, folks. Stephen Page, founder and CEO of Smarter Health AI. If you have any questions, Stephen is certainly on LinkedIn, or go to their website. Stephen, what's the website?
It's SmarterhealthAI.com and easy enough to find me there. And as you say, I'm on LinkedIn under Lord Page.
Well, again, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me on I Don't Care today. And audience, thank you for joining me as always. I don't take your time for granted. I always appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me every week. And with that, I look forward to seeing you again next week on I Don't Care.